I am asked, and I'm speaking to young Canada now, are there rewards in public life? There are, not monetary, but there's a tremendous satisfaction in being able to say, I tried, I stood. John G. Diefenbaker. This is AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Jacob Shymanski, and today I'm joined with Karoline Bordeau. She's a regular contributor to AMI Audiobook Review. And Karoline, we're in the midst of a federal election campaign, and it's getting pretty spicy, and I'm really happy to have you on the show today for a thematic couple of reviews.
Absolutely.
So you read Values by Mark Carney, and I wrote Ripper, The Making of Pierre Poilievre by Mark Bourrie. Now, it seems unfair to compare a book that was written by an actual candidate and another one that's a biography written by not Poilievre, but this is the best we can do. There was actually another biography written about Pierre Poilievre kind of recently, but this one is the most recent and the most high-profile one. And Values is definitely the most high-profile book that Mark Carney has written. And what we're going to do is, one by one, just go through these books and let you know like what we've extracted from them, because they might be very interesting for voters. You can even say that this is we read these books so that you don't have to. It's that type of video. Shall I go first with Ripper?
Yes. Do you want to give us a little about what you thought of it? And then I have some questions for you.
Okay, so first things first is I call this a biography, but it's not quite a straightforward biography. It does go into Pierre Poilievre's upbringing very briefly, but it's mostly a recounting of Poilievre's political career and kind of laying out a picture of the man. Like it's not a biography in the traditional sense. It's also not a mythologizing type of memoir. It's not a flat out hit piece or anything, but it's also not exactly flattering.
Do you get to know him at all? Like, do you feel like you've gotten to know him from reading it?
No, actually. I got to know him as a politician, which is what he is at his core. But it's like I don't know what he likes to eat. I don't know what he's like one-on-one. I don't know about his hobbies or anything like that. Like it's not the type of book that humanizes the man. It really isn't. But like I said, it's not exactly a flattering book, and I don't think the Poilievre campaign is going to be too happy about this one. The author's introduction is pretty biased right off the bat. It kind of paints him as a ripper, which is this concept where he divides every politician into one of two groups: rippers and weavers. Rippers being the politicians who rip people apart and see politics as a battleground where anything goes, whereas weavers are the consensus builders, the people that bring people together. And the point the author is making, Mark Bourrie, is that weavers were very big during the pandemic, but that rippers are the politicians of the times. Maybe pre-Mark Carney, which is why this book is so timely, right? Like things have kind of changed, right? So it's the book is told in mostly chronological order, and it does a good job at tying Poilievre's story with what he's known for today. And
So what is he known for? Like, summarize the man if I don't know him, and I don't.
Poilievre started out incredibly young in politics. He was one of the youngest sitting MPs in Canadian history in his mid-20s. And from the very start, Karoline, he was known for being a great quote for the media, even back when he was a backbencher. He was always very much ahead of his time. And what this book bangs on over and over and over is that he was incredibly consistent in terms of his stances and his methods. He was always that attack dog politician that everybody frames him as. It even says that he's kind of self-aware of that reputation and kind of seems to enjoy it. But he's never really changed as a person, which is not something you can say about all politicians. And in that sense, Mark Bourrie is he kind of admires him in a way because as rude and ruthless Poilievre can be, he's also undeniably incredibly effective as a politician. Does that help you out a little bit?
I think so. So does he tell you anything that is humanizing or positive? Because so far, the description doesn't make me want to run out and go meet him. You know what I mean? Like it's
Not explicitly positive. I would definitely say that this book kind of comes off as like a backhanded insult more than like a backhanded compliment. If I were to, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is scathing and 10 is glowing, this is probably like a 3 or a 4.
yeah.
But it's not like the author flat out goes out and tell you that he's very problematic. It's a lot of the times it's very just matter of fact talking about Poilievre's time in politics,
Mhm.
and it takes a good amount to just contextualize the politics of the time before it tells you what Poilievre did. And so there's a lot of very matter of fact, very like historical account of where politics were in 2004 and 2010. It even goes into like the convoy and the pandemic and 2015 when Stephen Harper lost to Justin Trudeau. I think what might be useful for this review is to tell you like what I got out of it.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so one thing you'll find out is that Poilievre is a truly unique politician. Is that he's unbelievably dedicated to his job. He's a workaholic, incredibly effective, with an unbelievable political antenna. Um, it seems like it's not exactly a compliment to say that somebody is a pure politician, born to be a politician, because they don't exactly have the best reputation. Um, he's he is what he is. He owns it, and he stands on business most of the time. You kind of know where he's going to stand, which is like definitely a compliment in that regard. So something that surprised me was that he was always a bit of a misfit, even amongst the conservatives on the Hill during his time. He always hung around with like the less popular politicians, even though he always drew attention to himself from the very start. Because, like I said, he was always known as being a great quote. From the very start, he always got a lot of calls from the media to be like, "Hey, can we get a comment on this and that?" Even though he was just like a backbencher. Like usually, you would ask a cabinet minister that's related to the issue at hand. No, they would just go to like the backbencher, this like 26-year-old in the back, because he was just like so witty in his responses and kind of ruthless most of the time. I think we should move on to Values by Mark Carney. And I don't know if you saw this, Caroline, but when Danielle Smith, the premier of Alberta, was down in Florida it was pretty controversial that she made it down there at this like big conservative conference. She actually brought up this book, Values by Mark Carney, where she went, "We
No.
actually know what Mark Carney stands for," then started reading about some of his environmental views because he's quite the environmentalist. But
He is.
you've read this book. So it's
Well,
called Values.
mostly.
Most of it. Well, that's still a big chunk because it's like 600 pages. It's gigantic.
Oh yeah, it's a big
It's a big book. So it's called Values. Is it really just a book that lays out his values, or is it at least part memoir?
so I was going to say that you don't get to know Mark Carney by reading this book. That was my
Mhm.
original opinion. Um, and then once I really got into the book, I realized you do get glimpses into some of what he stands for. And you do learn a lot about how the climate and environmental issues are really important to him, by the things he talks about with regards to regulation and to policies that he promoted for the Bank of England. You also get to know him a bit, by some of his actual um, things that he did while at the Bank of England and while at the Bank of Canada. But and I'll talk a little bit about that a bit later, but like, he instituted the governor of the Bank of England goes to visit elementary schools in far-flung parts of the country so that, he gets to speak to people who are not connected to the bank, who probably don't see themselves at all as connected to the
Hmm.
bank, and connects with young children on the same level as they do, explaining to them that I grew up far from the center of government and banking. I was nowhere near Toronto. And, I just did what I loved. This is something he actually said. I just did what I loved, and look where it brought me. Um, this is his story that he's telling. And he talks about how he received letters from families thanking him for giving their children a reason to like school again. So
Huh.
I guess you do get to know him a little.
Yeah, well, when you hear the word value, all that really means is like, what do you care about? What does Mark
Well,
Carney care about? Like from what you've gleaned in this book.
so he begins by defining um, and connecting the word value to the word values. And he
Huh.
puts it simply by saying value is how we assign cost to something. So, what is the value of it to us? And values are the things that you stand for. What do you believe in? How do you choose to run your life? What are the things you care about? So to him, it's environment, it's kindness, it's generosity, it's public service, um, and trust. So those are things that he points out that are important. And what he says is you must align the values that you hold to the value that you put on different parts of your life. I thought was an interesting way to put it.
It sounds to me like this book is a little bit all over the place from what I can tell here. Because it doesn't sound like it's a straightforward just this is what I'm all about, which would be really helpful right about now during the time of the elections. Is
It
this
would
book
be.
useful to voters who are trying to learn more about him, who he stands for, what he would be like as a prime minister?
I don't really think that um, I would see it that way. I would have liked more something that gave us more of a personal history, a little bit with some chapters written by some people that grew up with him, or someone else who wrote about him who knows him. Like for example, if his wife were to write a book, which would be really interesting. Um, that I think would give us more. Although one of the articles I read did say that it's his resume, uh, as an
Mm.
applicant to be our prime minister. And I don't know if you've come across that article as well, but I thought it was an interesting way to say that, because it certainly, to me, my first impression was it reads like an economics textbook, and let me tell you,
That sounds
that was a
awful.
big exactly, that was a big turn off. I was like, "What did I sign up for?"
So
I
he
was
did
like,
also narrate the audiobook
"Yes,
himself.
it does." So as a narrator, he's really not bad. Like, he's not a professional, reader and a narrator. Um, and yet I didn't fall asleep.
Huh.
I started to tune out at a few times when he's talking about specific monetary policies. But I would just speed it up, and that was my approach. Like, that's how I studied constitutional law when I was in law school. I would start to tune out, I would speed it up, and I would start to tune out, and I'd speed it up. So by the time I finished my constitutional law course, I think I was reading at like 600 words a minute or something, according to my computer.
Jeez.
Um, and yes, you do retain stuff that way. I'm just saying.
Um, Mark Carney does not speak at 600 words per minute. In fact, he's quite a slow talker. And I only bring this up
Yes.
because I've seen his communication style in press conferences when he's answering questions, and he answers in paragraphs. He's extremely thorough, and I always thought he talks like somebody would write, which is not necessarily a good thing if you're just trying to, be a communicator as a politician. How does it translate in this book when it comes to his writing style?
I actually find his writing style really nice. I find it very easy to follow. I like I think in a way he has his own formula as well. So he tells you a story. He explains what he's trying to get at, and then he gives you the economics of why or what the theory is. He breaks the book up into three main sections, or at least that I've managed to figure out so far. He talks about like the history of economics. He talks about some of the crisis that we've seen, and then there's his plans or hopes for the future. The
Huh.
three crises.
It
Sorry.
sounds like that third part is the most relevant to most readers in 2025.
I would think so. Yes. Yeah, and I was going to like try and read ahead and get there, but alas, I think I'll let people figure that piece out for themselves. Um, but what I do want to say, and yesterday I was thinking, do I want to say to people, go ahead and read this book, or don't I? And I'm going to say yes, because there are so many interesting little tidbits. If you're a trivia junkie, and I love trivia, um, I think like there is a lot in there. So, for example, the first paper money was used in China. I might have known that, but I didn't remember it. Um, and he talks about like the financial crisis of 2008. He talks a lot about the COVID crisis and what we've learned from it. And what's interesting about that is he talks about some of the things that he's been talking about on the road, as he is going and visiting different communities. And basically, those are like the values of trust and rules. And he like his biggest message is we need regulations in order for all of us to know what the rules are, how things work, and what to expect from our government. So I think he's the stability guy.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you. Like, what are the takeaways from this book? What can you take away about the man, Mark Carney? So that's one of them. That he's definitely pro regulations, like they're important. He's not the type of person to just, on
He's not
principle, get
just going to
rid of
go with it.
regulations. He's not just gonna
Yeah.
go with it. Yeah. So what else can you take away from this book that you think would be important for readers and voters?
So, as a voter, what I really found helpful with this book is that he doesn't say to do something, or that we should not do something, without giving you good reasons as to how he's arriving at that decision. So this is not a slogan kind of person, which is to compare to Poilievre's book. He's more slogan, more sound bites. Carney is
Right.
not the soundbite guy, right? Like you're going to get reasoned answers. And I also get a really calm demeanor from just what he wrote in the book and listening to him speak lately. Like, this is not a reactionary kind of person.
Yeah, Mark Carney's sound bites are more like sound meals. They're it's like 3 minutes minimum. Like you cannot fit them in a YouTube short. But like so I hope that gives people a picture of these two books, Ripper, The Making of Pierre Poilievre, and Values by Mark Carney. And I think these are the two biggest books that are relevant to voters for the two main
I agree.
parties. Um, it it is a little bit unfair, like I will say, because Mark Carney obviously wrote this book, Values, and
Yes.
it is kind of a personal resume. Whereas Ripper, the making of Pierre Poilievre, was not written by Poilievre himself, and at that, it wasn't even like a flattering book. Like, it was meant to be like pretty
Yeah.
much objective, but I will backtrack a little bit on something I said earlier. That's not exactly um unbiased. Like, I think Rory is definitely pointing out a lot of issues with conservatism and
Yes.
Pierre Poilievre, the man. So it is definitely more scathing. I said it was like a 3 out of 10 on the scale of scathing to glowing. One being
Yeah.
scathing, 10 being glowing. I'd actually bring that down to 2. It's pretty scathing. It's obviously not fair. That said, there's a lot of interesting information about the Polyev, the politician, not so much the person. And
Yeah.
I hope that helps out everybody. Caroline, thank you so much for putting in the time to read Values, because the book you had to read was a lot longer than Ripper: The Making of Pierre Poilievre.
I'm looking forward to reading Ripper though. I will get it and read it just because it did sound interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting tidbits and stories about Canadian history as well. It's not like what 100% about Pierre Poilievre. There's a lot about the evolution of conservatism in Canada during like the 2000s and upwards.
Yeah, and I will say also with the Carney book, like I know it's a mouthful. It's long and it is heavier for sure, but there are a lot of interesting stories in there and a lot of history that I think most people would benefit from knowing in general. And if you're a trivia person like me, there is a lot in there.
You said economic textbook, and that makes me not want to ever read it ever.
I understand that, but there are still some cool things. Like, so look, ideally, I would love to find this book summarized or something in like, a couple of hundred pages where you just take the really, really good parts and less of the theory piece. And I think it would be a much better sell for most readers.
I think that's enough on
Yeah.
Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. We've been oversaturated by the elections. I want to move on to a bit of a solo review. So, Padma Lakshmi is a model and TV show personality that's very much involved in a couple different cooking shows. And now she's published a biography slash memoir with a heavy emphasis on food, love, loss, and what we ate by Padma Lakshmi. Caroline, you read this one. Who is Padma Lakshmi, and why would she write a memoir so centered around food?
So she's a model. She, uh, I guess, became a writer while modeling was kind of slowing down for her and in between doing different things. But she was married to Salman Rushdie. And I'm going to guess, and from what is in the book, that, it rubbed off on her. Like he wrote so much that she kind of just started writing. Um, and it, I think, caused some friction for them in their relationship as well. But that's why she became a writer. She just had to tell all of these cool things that she knew about the different personalities in the food world and the
Huh.
different traditions she grew up with, and of course, about her marriage. So.
And so, like, what is this book exactly? What kind of stories are in here?
Oh, lots of things about women taking care of each other, about the medical system failing women in some ways. She had um, a condition that was basically choking her from the inside out. Um,
Jeez. Hmm.
okay. Um, inside, like choking her, and doctors misdiagnosing her time after time. She had procedures that didn't even hit the right thing at all. She was told she'll never have children, and as soon as she received the proper treatment, boom, she became pregnant. So there's a lot in this book. The best parts to me are all the food ideas and the different things she describes, trips to markets. I really enjoyed this book. I found it to be a great break from election talk. So I would say it's definitely I think a 5 for me.
5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll take your word for it. Perfect. This was Love, Loss, and What We Ate by Padma Lakshmi. Karoline, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today's for AMI audio book review. AMI audio book review airs at weekends at 1 p.m. Eastern and repeats every 6 hours on the channels on weekends. We're also available on all your big podcast platforms, and that includes YouTube. You can send us an email with any of your feedback. We'd love to hear it at audiobookreview@ami.ca. That's AMI audiobook review@ami.ca. Correction, that is audiobookreview@ami.ca. There's no AMI at the start. You can also follow us on Instagram at AMI Audiobook Review. This one does have the AMI at the start. That's all the time we have. I'm Jacob Shymanski. Have a good one.